girl Brittany, and I'm here with Aaron today, and we are talking about identifying dysfunction. Now, the definition of dysfunction is abnormality or impairment. Now, from the time of birth, from the time that we come out of our mother's womb, we begin to learn. Our brains begin to pick up information, and that's going to later form who we are, the characteristics and everything. But at first, it starts with your environment. What you're around is what you know. So in your house, if you think about it, if you grew up speaking English, you're accustomed to English. If you grew up in a household speaking Spanish, you're accustomed to Spanish. If you grew up in a household that did not like milk, because I love food. But for example, my mom, she didn't like milk. My grandma didn't like milk. So here I go as an adult realizing like I don't like to drink milk. I am not about to drink no plain milk. Ugh. But I realize now that I'm older that it's just a learned behavior. It's just what I'm accustomed to. It's what my family showed me. You know, you think about family and going into dysfunction and learning the behavior. You learn the behavior and model the behavior of what you've seen and what you were shown. So if you were a little baby and you seen mama cussing out daddy every single day, that's what you're accustomed to. And if you think about Big Mama cooked every Sunday, and then y'all kept on the tradition of cooking every Sunday, that's a learned behavior.
Yeah, sounds like it sums it up. The analogy that I like to use when I think about behaviors and who we are becoming in our lives is the example of think about yourself being raised by a bunch of wolves and never ever being around any humans at all. How would you act if you've never had any human interaction? Mm-hmm. Do you think that you will be howling like a wolf, or do you think that you will pick up on a language? Most likely you're going to be howling like that wolf and acting like a wolf and growling and taking on the ways of the wolf. And that's not because that you are a wolf, that's because that's all you know, that's all you learned while you were growing up with the wolves.
You know no different.
Yeah.
Like Tarzan.
Yeah.
Was he with wolves? I don't know if he was with wolves, but yeah.
So if you don't know no different, does that make it right or wrong? You know, we have to ask ourselves this question because a lot of the times people believe that the way that they grew up, it is the right way to be because it's what they are used to.
It's all they know.
And a lot of times what we are used to, you know, can cloud the way that we think. You know, because now anything outside of what we know, we feel like can't be right. Or it automatically has to be wrong. Mm-hmm. But this is not the case. Mm-hmm. It's just that we are not familiar with that thing. This is the case of something being outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. The norm.
The norm.
So, I mean, when we think about dysfunction and it being a learned behavior, and then we grow up and we get past the baby stage and we know what we know, what does dysfunction look like? What does dysfunction look like? Like in today's society, today's world, what does dysfunction look like? Or like, I guess, what kind of dysfunction have we
captured
seen?
people what type of dysfunctions are people a part of?
Yeah.
How do you know that you are in dysfunction? You find out if you're in dysfunction by paying attention to your surroundings. You have to really understand what's going on around you, so you have to really pay attention to habits and repeated behaviors. And then you have to ask yourself this question: is this normal behavior? Where did I get this behavior from? Examples is like people who drink every weekend. They work all week and then they just can't wait to get to the weekend to drink and party and go back to work again. There's no in between. That's what they are accustomed to. That's what they're learned, and it also can be their coping mechanism to cover up pain or hurt, from another dysfunction. Another example is drugs. People tend to, find themselves on drugs from growing up around people who are on drugs.
Hurt, pain. I think they kind of all go hand in hand. It's just what you see is what you know. Another dysfunction in a lot of people's families and everywhere around the world would be eating habits and not getting healthy. People like to eat. I like to eat. And I know that I grew up not having healthy eating habits, not having the eating habits of fruits and vegetables. It was just like whatever tastes good, drinking pop all the time, never drinking water. And for me, that's a dysfunction, and that's still a dysfunction for me that I'm working on, because I had to choose to make a different decision. I have to pay attention to that, because you can get so comfortable that, again, you don't see anything wrong with just eating habits. You don't see nothing wrong with not having that piece of vegetable or that piece of fruit. You don't see nothing wrong with it. You cool with it because that's all you grew up in. Your mom is still here. She's still kicking, so you don't see nothing wrong with it. But eating habits, I think, is a big one, because people like to eat. I like to eat. Whew. That's rough on me.
And the reason that we like to eat is because we've been taught to eat.
Yes.
We've been taught to eat these foods that we are eating from birth, especially in certain cultures. You can see people putting fried chicken, or a baby eating on fried chicken at 1 or 2 months. The baby in reality doesn't know anything about fried chicken or anything like that, or noodles and mashed potatoes and stuff like that. We introduce that to them, and from the time we introduce that to them, they come acquired to that taste. So if we introduce babies with fruits, vegetables, and just that solely, then we would have a baby who would only want to crave fruits and vegetables. The chicken and all of that would be abnormal to the child as the child grows up in its life. And not to say that the child would never try chicken and steak and stuff like that. The child very well may try those things, but the baby or the child will be more accustomed to fruits and vegetables and water from the things that it grew up eating. And those things will actually taste good to the child or into his adulthood. The vegetables and fruits and vegetables don't taste good to us because we didn't grow up eating fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And if we would have, we would be a lot more healthier. Right now, there's people dying from diabetes, which is a breakdown of the pancreas, heart disease, which is plaque on the walls of the arteries in the heart, or a blood clot somewhere in the body that got loose and then end up in the heart or the brain, which can cause a stroke. Another thing is cancer. All of these things is on an all-time rise just by something we were taught to do, something that we were taught as this is the norm for a certain culture or a certain people. But in reality, it's a dysfunction. It's a dysfunction that is killing so many of us who could still be alive today, just by changing that habit. Just like drugs. Drugs are killing people every single day. People are stuck, people are addicted, and they feel like they have no way out because they're looking for a satisfaction. And through that satisfaction, they don't understand that it's going to end up killing them in probably not the short term, but the long term. The same as for drinking. Drinking is more or less likely to kill you than drugs and food, in my opinion, but it happens. And I say that because heart disease is the #1 killer in America. So that's why I say food before drinking, although they both can be bad, especially when we are indulging in those things. I'm not saying it's not okay to have a drink every once in a while or eat a piece of fried chicken every once in a while, but I'm saying that we can't become make it a habit. It can't become a habit. If it becomes a habit, then that's when the problem comes. If people were to get the consequences, say, drinking drugs or bad eating habits, if we got those consequences immediately, for an example, if you touch a hot stove, you automatically know that this is dangerous. I'm not going to touch this hot stove no more. If that were to hit us, if drinking drugs and eating were to hit us like that, then you wouldn't do it. But since we get it's a long-term thing and we get satisfaction with this thing, we are more willing to take the risk. Although the risk at the end can be big and can be detrimental to your health. Drugs, drinking, and eating.
And not only your health, but your family. When we're talking about dysfunction, anything that is dysfunctional, if you don't break the habit, it then passes to the rest of your family. So if you have children and there's a bunch of dysfunction, then it's going to cause dysfunction in their house and in their kids' house and their kids' house until somebody decides to break the cycle. So, sorry guys, bear with me, I'm sick, but I'm trying to push through. I don't need to keep coughing. But when I think about, passing it down to families, and when I say dysfunction, I think about like domestic violence is a good example of a dysfunction that then gets passed down to the kids. You may not see, as the parent who's in the domestic violence or causing the domestic violence, you may not see those effects at that exact moment, just depending on, how severe things are. But at the end of the day, it will have an effect on the kids. I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence, and for me, it didn't seem like that big of a deal for the people around me, or my mom, who was the one that was getting abused. But as I got older, that dysfunction, it showed in a different way. So I think, you have to be careful of those dysfunctions. You have to really be aware of them, because those big things and those little moments that you don't think mean anything at that exact moment have a big impact on your family. That just has to do with like education. I got my GED. I'm not ashamed of it because I'm in college right now. But my mom didn't get her high school diploma, and so on and so forth like that. That is a generational dysfunction. Education. We have to teach our kids and show our kids differently because I need my kids to do something different. Financial literacy is another one.
Yeah, so dysfunction is generational because all that means is someone is passing on bad habits down, and it's continuously repeating itself, and it's causing us to be in a cycle of violence.
Like chains.
Yeah.
It's like a chain. Chain, chain, chain. I can't sing.
Cycle of violence, cycle of abuse. You know, those things are very real.
Yep.
And in all aspects of life, you know, we have to be able to become aware if we are in dysfunction. You know, a lot of times we don't know that we are in dysfunction because it feels normal.
It feels normal.
You know, it's normalized, and that is the problem. Because anytime you normalize something, 9 times out of 10, you can't see anything outside of that normality. And we have to break that open and change the way that we do things so that we don't pass on these bad behaviors to our children and their children and their children's children. And you know, we have to give them something to look forward to. You know, in our household, we don't do all of the drinking, and you know, these are things that we changed. That I was a part of these type of dysfunction: drinking, drugs, fighting, conflicts, eating. Still working on eating. You know,
that's a struggle. But we're working on
it. It's one of those things that you have to continue to work at. But we are breaking those cycles, you know, because if we don't break those cycles, it just goes around circle and a circle and a circle, circle and a circle. And then we continue to do that the rest of our lives, and then we die, and then that's it.
Yep. That's why you have to learn how to get out of dysfunction. And again, you got to be aware. I think awareness also has a lot to do with
we forgot when we're gonna go back to awareness.
Oh, okay.
But another one is nobody's teaching financial literacy. Nobody knows about credit really.
I did say financial literacy, by the way. I'm just saying we better catch on. Catch up.
Catching on. Nobody teaches us anything about that. Nobody teaches us to invest. Nobody teaches us about assets. Nobody teaches us about stocks, bonds, or anything like that. So, in other words, while we're out here drinking, having fun, and just doing the things that satisfy us, in reality, we are setting ourselves up and setting ourselves back to have to restart our life and learn now at the age of 30, 40 years old how to build your credit. Because now at this time, more than likely your credit's bad.
Yeah.
More than likely you have no assets. More than likely you have no stocks. More than likely you have no investments whatsoever. So that sets you back in the real time. And if you're in a family situation, this could be detrimental to your family because now your kids are watching you struggle to survive.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the times we still don't teach our children those things because we don't know them.
Yeah.
So that's why it's our job to get out there and change that narrative and really start to learn how to invest, how to purchase assets, you know, how to do those things.
Yeah.
You know, like even today, people are so caught up in dysfunction. Like if you say, hey, we're going to have this party and we're going to have drinking and just come by. You're going to get the whole world to come by. Everybody's going to be there. Everybody's going to be available to get drunk and be on drugs and to party with you. But as soon as you say, hey, I got some investment ideas. I got some ideals on some property that we can purchase. Nobody's going to be there. And you got to ask yourself, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we turn up, have fun, drink together,
But we can't
but
build together.
we can't sit down and talk about building generational wealth?
Yeah.
That's a problem, especially for some cultures. Some cultures have that down, but some cultures don't. So we really have to work at that, because I try to build a team of 10 to do some very, very good, generational wealth building. I had very good ideals, but we are working on those ideals ourselves now because the people who are around us are not really ready for that type of thing yet because they're still in the normalization that they were taught. That's another thing. If we are taught from the beginning, investing, numbers, stocks, bonds, assets, if we are taught that thing from the time of birth, it will be here.
Yeah.
We will do it. It will happen. We will be better off, So that's why it's best to teach your children this thing. You don't have to wait till they get a certain age. You can do it while they are young.
Because they're impressionable.
Yeah. They will repeat what they see. That's all they know. They will repeat what they see. Not hear, but see.
Yeah.
And that's how children usually learn, so all of those things. And there's so many different dysfunctions in the world. These are just a few to name that we just named today. There's so many dysfunctions that are killing families every day. And,
and that's why you have to be aware.
And that's why you have to be
aware. Why you gotta be aware. Because again, like you said, it's just a couple that we name, but everybody has their own families and their own issues and their own dysfunctions, and it may not look like ours, but you have to be aware. This is when you start to wake up. This is how you get out of dysfunction.
Get out of dysfunction.
Yeah.
You have to be aware that it's happening.
But what I was going to say earlier is that is something that goes along with awareness. I think first is you have to not lie to yourself. You have to accept that you are not going to lie to yourself. But because to become aware, you can't live in this fantasy world and say, oh, I know this is happening, and then ignore it. When we say be aware, it means not lying to yourself and accepting the truth. And then you can become aware. Because if you lie to yourself, you're going to stay in that thing forever, boo.
No, accept your truth.
Accept it.
Do what's best for you, because a lot of people are not doing what's best for them, and then they will keep you in their dysfunction, and then you will remain stuck in your dysfunction because of someone else.
You have to understand that whatever the dysfunction is not normal. And when you say it ain't normal, you really run with that. Like, this ain't normal. It's not okay. If you feel that it should be different, you become aware of what's going on around you. And then everything may not happen at once, and you may not be aware of everything at once. It may come in bits and pieces. But if you notice one thing and you begin to change it, the next thing you'll be able to be aware of and begin to change, and then the next thing. So you have to be aware of all of your surroundings. It's not normal. It's not normal. Call a spade a spade. That's my favorite thing to say.
Call it what it is.
Tell it like it is, what it is.
Not
what you
want
it to be.
Or what you want it to be.
Call it
what it is. Because it's there. A lot of people do know what stuff is, but they lie to themselves. That's the biggest thing that I have realized in this life, that people will look themselves in the mirror and they will lie to themselves.
Yes.
And, you know, like we said in the last video, the most important thing to do is get to know self first. And you have to be honest with self,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because that's really the first part of growth. Once you're able to do that.
Yeah, the sky is the limit, because when we tend to, as humans, just in general, we tell the happy parts of our story. We just, we don't want to talk about the bad. Nobody starts off with the bad. They think somebody be turned off from the bad, so they begin to tell the great part of the story instead of telling the dysfunctioning part of the story. And then there's no growth because they're lying to themselves. They done told the story so good so many times, they now believe it themselves. That's a dysfunction in itself. Lying to yourself. Tell yourself the truth.
And it's deadly. And you know, there's people out there that can really see through dysfunction from a mile away. You know, but most people can't see anything. You know, so you have to acquire a vision to seek out dysfunction when it approaches you, because it will. Especially if you have dysfunctional family, you will be approached with dysfunction. Everybody doesn't come out of dysfunction together. You come out by yourself, and more than likely when you do come out, they're gonna start to say, well, you acting funny.
You think you better.
Think you better.
You bougie.
Yeah. No, that's just because you changed the way you think. You changed your outcome.
Yeah, you changed your habits. You start to do things different. You notice things that you didn't want to do. You know?
Became more disciplined.
More disciplined.
Discipline is usually what people don't want to do. You're doing things you don't want to do.
That is discipline.
You
I think
know?
that's the definition.
Yeah.
I do. I really do. But yeah, you change your habits. You change your environment. You change the people that you're around. The things that you do. If you drink every weekend, then you need to start hanging with some people, and you want to break that dysfunction. You start hanging with people who don't drink. They have a good time, but they don't have to drink to have a good time. Or if you're doing drugs, you hang with people who ain't on drugs and can have a good time not on drugs. And if you want to break the dysfunction of education, you have to figure out and say, I want better or I want more, and then say, I don't want to do that, and then start something and find people who are educated or being educated or in school or something, going in the direction that you want to go. You have to change your environment. You can't stay in that same house.
No.
It's time to go.
It's time to break down them walls, because people like to hang around people who are just like them.
Comfort zone.
So when you're in a dysfunction, you're around people who are just like you. You know, like she said, you have to get around people who you're not used to being around. They don't have to be the same color. I mean, they can be, as long as they're not doing the things that trapped you into your dysfunction before, you know.
And it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Because it's so new. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm around new people. These people ain't doing what I used to. It's so easy to revert back to dysfunction. That is also where you kind of have to have your steps of, not lying to yourself. Awareness, changing your habit, you have to have a mental checklist in your head. Because if you don't remember why you're in that uncomfortable position, it's so easy to go back to the dysfunction. You have to be aware. Okay, this is different. This is strange, but in the end, is this going to be good for me? Is it going to help me?
It will be beneficial for you.
Yep.
Because you're not doing the same old thing as before.
There's growth. Because if not, you become stagnant and you're never moving. Dysfunction is something that it's impairment. You're not moving. It's kind of like it's a
You're
hole.
in neutral. Think of a car as neutral. You might roll a couple feet here and there. But that's when you're not on the hill anymore, you're not rolling.
It reminds me of the analogy because you said a car. So we used to have this old little green little bucket car, and, and our windshield wiper stopped working, and we had to drive around. And I remember it was raining one time, so we had got these little strings and tied them to each side of the windshield. And he had a string while he was driving. I had a string in the passenger side, and we would do like this back and forth. We had one arm going. That's dysfunctional. That is something that we made work. See, people make dysfunction work for them. Just because it's dysfunctional doesn't mean that it's not going to work and you can't make it work. But at some point, we obviously had to say, you know what, we're going to have to get these windshield wipers or whatever the piece was that made our windshield wipers not work in the first place. Because driving like that is dangerous. Dysfunction can be dangerous. We could have been, whipping and wiping and boom, crash. Because we just hold on to dysfunction. Just got to keep it moving. Just come on down the road. That's life too. You have to be so aware that this windshield wiper is dysfunctional and we've normalized it. That's what happens. You normalize dysfunction.
You normalize that thing. And when you're getting out of that thing, it's going to try to pull you back to that thing.
Every time.
And it's going to feel good to go back.
Sure is, because you're back to your comfort zone. That's what you know.
You really have to be careful with that. So you got to make sure you build a strong foundation to not be pulled back into that dysfunction or, sliding backwards, downhill. You got to climb back up that hill.
But how do you...
Every time you slide down the hill, remember you got to climb right back up the hill.
Yeah, and then starting from square one is always the worst.
Slide down, you got to go back up it. Anything you didn't work on, you're going to rework on it again. But yeah. The
way to get out of that, though, is spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
You gotta know who you are. You get to a point where you become so far removed from the dysfunction that you you create your own identity. But when you create that own identity, you kind of have to learn who you are. So you have to start spending time with yourself.
That's critical. You have to spend time with yourself. I try to spend time with myself from time to time and write notes to spend time with myself and to talk to myself to make sure I'm doing what I should be doing, or if I should be doing more to make everything else work around me. We see ourselves differently, or we supposed to. I see myself as a leader, and I have a whole unit to lead. The woman may see herself different, and her job may be different to her than what my job is for me. So I have to make sure that I'm doing my job the best that I can. But yeah, and with these dysfunctions, when you do get in a relationship with someone else, just know that your dysfunctions now come together.
Yes.
And this could be deadly.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times the dysfunctions of two different families are not going to be the same. They're going to more than likely be different, or they can be the same. So dysfunction, I like to call that baggage. And this baggage usually doesn't open up until later on into the relationship, because we as humans are good at hiding things in the beginning. We know what dysfunction is. We just choose not to see it.
We're lying to ourselves and them.
We're saying, hey, I'm going to show them only the good. And then when you show only the good, the bad is going to show up in any situation that you have or that you are in. Just showing the good the bad is going to show. When I think about that, I usually think about when people apply for jobs and they put on their resume and they say, hey, I'm this, I'm good, I'm excellent, I'm retired, I'm doing this, and I do all of this stuff excellent. But we never put on there that I'm a late person, I'm lazy, I hate working, you know, the world likes you better to lie to them. Who can tell the best lie? And that is a dysfunction. So break out of that. Be honest with yourself. You know, it would take you a lot further than the route you were going before. You know, although you felt like you were moving fast, and you know the abnormal route may feel like you're going slower, but in reality, you're killing ground.
Yeah.
You know, you're cutting down the miles at a much faster pace.
Yes, because you're broken out of the dysfunction.
You're going forward. You're not going in circles.
And it's hard, I think, you know, spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself, because I thought forever I did this, and then I learned that I didn't do this, and I really didn't spend time with myself. I really didn't talk to myself. I just didn't do any of that. And then I decided I wanted to start doing that, and I start, you know, having my intimate prayer times, reading my Bible, talking to God, you know, getting to know Him was getting to know myself, because it set me up for, it sets you up for your worth, knowing who you are. You know, you want to know that person, but again, it's hard to do. So writing in a journal.
Exercise.
Being by yourself I think is the key. Spending time with yourself,
Going
like
to the gym.
literally being by yourself. I started going on these walks and these runs, and I think that's when my brain started working, and I start thinking on a different level. I start thinking about my childhood, thinking about my teenage years, my young adulthood, things that I seen in myself that I didn't like and I wanted to change. I started tackling those one by one, but it started honestly with my walks and my runs. I loved them. I don't do them as much anymore, but I'm gonna get back to my exercise. But spending time with self was key, because it let me know who I was. It allowed me to have space and think for myself. No kids, no husbands, no wives. Spend time with yourself. Give yourself, if you don't give nothing but an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, but you should have some time by yourself in your own brain to be able to talk to yourself and to release and to organize thoughts.
Yes, it's okay to be selfish. You know, you've got to make sure that you put yourself first. Nobody else is going to put you first before them. You know, more than likely you're in a world where people are just take. Put yourself first, you know. Allow yourself to spend that time, you know, because there's a lot of growth there. To know self is to know.
Yeah, you have to know yourself. And then once you do know yourself, you're able to, after you went through your checklist, you know, of awareness, changing your habits, you know, changing your environment, spending time with yourself, you get to the point where you really realize what the dysfunction was or is, and you decide it's time to let that go. I don't want no parts of it. Y'all can have that. Your lingo starts to change because you don't want to be a part of it anymore, so you learn to really let it go. You understand that it's your truth. You understand that it's what you've been through. You understand that it's what you were accustomed to and you grew up around. But you get to a point where you say, no more for me, and you decide to let that go. And the power in letting the dysfunction go is having the ability to stand on your own and decide where you're going to go in your journey without being tied down to the negativity.
Yeah, you're likely going to get backlash from breaking dysfunction because, one, you're still kind of toxic because you're coming out of a toxic situation around a lot of toxic people. I like to use this analogy that toxicity depends on what type of snake you get bit by. You know, a lot of snakes are less poisonous than the other snakes. And I'm not saying that you can't go around these toxic people, but I'm just saying make sure the snake is not can knock you out with just a little bit of venom, you know. So make sure you're around snakes that are less venomous.
I read this thing the other day. It said, I liked it, this quote. It said,
people that are less venomous, they're not snake, but just use an analogy.
Yeah, because and this is a different analogy, but forgiveness is not reconnection. So when you let go of this dysfunction and you forgive whatever situation it may be, whether you grew up seeing, you know, your parents drink alcohol, or domestic violence or whatever, you know, you have to get over that, but you also kind of have to forgive the situation. But because you forgive the situation does not mean, and you let it go does not necessarily mean you reconnect to it. You don't have to reattach to it. You let it go. Let it go.
That's just depending on how toxic it is.
Exactly.
If it's really toxic, you don't have to be around it. You know, I know you still want to be around some of those people, and you can.
You can.
You just have to have a different mindset. It's okay to say no.
That's, what do you call that? Setting
boundaries. You can say no. If you're around people that you can't say no to, get away from those people. If you're around people that can't say no to you, get away from those people. Those people are not good for you. Every time you ask them, is this good? What you think about this? And all the time you never hear no from that person. Red flag.
No, you don't need no yes.
Dysfunction. You know, because those people are only doing what they think that you want them to do.
But it's always a give and take, so it satisfies them in some kind of way. By them bringing you back into that dysfunction, then that boosts their fun time, or their party, or their happy time, or, you know, depending on whatever it is, their money. You know, it increases them to get to go out and indulge on some good old food because they know that they're going to pull you right back into the bad eating habits.
Yeah.
I like food.
So the key here is change your habits. Okay? Change your environment.
Yeah.
And let go, forgive.
Yes.
And set boundaries. Setting boundaries is key. You know, because you set those boundaries, you are teaching people how to treat you. If you don't set those boundaries, people will take advantage of you.
Sure will.
If you don't set those boundaries, those people are going to destroy your marriages. If you don't set those boundaries, those people are going to destroy other relationships for you. If you don't set those boundaries, you are going to deteriorate over time. Set boundaries. Don't let people take advantage of you. Dysfunction will destroy your life. Probably not now. Just because you don't feel the heat now from the stove doesn't mean that the heat is not warming up.
I agree. And with all of that said, if you like this video and like what you guys heard, comment below, like us, share us, hit the subscribe button. You can follow us on familyfaithandlove.org. That is our blog site. It's linked to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All of our feeds go there, but we also do a little writing here and there. You can obviously follow us on YouTube, The Tallies FFL. Subscribe below here. Family Faith and Love. So it's Family Faith AND Love on Instagram. Family Faith and Love on Facebook. It is your girl Brittany, and this is
Aaron.
And we is out this piece. Like us, comment below. Let us know more topics you guys want to talk about. We got a lot we cooking up. But yeah, hit that subscribe button. We out.